was the summer of 1999 in a quiet town tucked deep within Oregon's forests. A small, independent film crew had gathered in an abandoned farmhouse to shoot what they hoped would be the next cult horror hit. Among the cast were two child actresses, Emily Carter, just 12 years old, and Lily Monroe, who had recently turned 13. Both had glowing resumes from commercials and local theater. The director called them his stars in the making, certain this low-budget project would be their stepping stone into Hollywood. Nobody could have predicted that it would instead mark the final time anyone saw them alive. The farmhouse where filming took place had a reputation of its own. Locals whispered about strange happenings on the property, lights in the windows long after midnight, echoes in the fields when no one was around, and the rumor that the land itself was cursed. But to the young actresses, it was just another job, long hours of retakes, heavy makeup, and endless waiting between scenes. Still, something about the atmosphere unsettled them. Emily told her mother on set one evening, "It feels like the house is watching us." Her mother brushed it off as nerves, never realizing it would be the last conversation they'd ever share. The day before the girls disappeared, the crew filmed late into the night. According to cast members, both Emily and Lily seemed distracted, often glancing over their shoulders as though hearing something off camera. At one point, production halted when Lily refused to go back inside the farmhouse, claiming she saw someone standing in the upstairs window. The director grew frustrated, insisting nobody else was there. Crew members later admitted they felt uneasy too, but pressed on. They were running out of budget and time. By morning, the farmhouse was silent. The crew arrived for the next day's shoot only to find Emily and Lily missing. Their costumes lay folded neatly on the floor near the kitchen set, but there was no sign of the girls themselves. Makeup brushes, half-finished lunches, even Emily's worn-out sneakers were scattered around as though the two had simply stepped out for a moment. But they never returned. Police were called within the hour, and what should have been another day of filming spiraled into a crime scene. Detectives scoured the property for clues. No fingerprints outside of the cast and crew were found. No forced entry, no broken windows, no tracks leading into the woods. Search dogs traced a faint scent of the girls toward the barn, but it ended abruptly, as though they had vanished into thin air. For weeks, helicopters combed the forest, volunteers lined the dirt roads, and missing posters flooded the small town. Yet the strangest part wasn't just the absence of Emily and Lily. It was the eerie silence that lingered in the farmhouse. Crew members later confessed that, in the days following the disappearance, none of them could bring themselves to walk inside again. In the immediate aftermath of the disappearance, investigators went all in. They interrogated every member of the film crew, from the director down to the sound technician. They questioned neighbors who lived miles away, hikers who'd been spotted in the woods, and even drifters who'd passed through town that summer. Everyone had a theory, but nobody had answers. The farmhouse sat on private land locked behind a rusted gate, making it nearly impossible for a stranger to sneak in without someone noticing. Still, two girls were gone, and the only certainty was that they hadn't walked away willingly. Detectives turned their focus on the eccentric director, a man named Walter Griggs. He had a reputation for pushing his cast beyond their limits, obsessed with getting real fear on film. Rumors spread that he'd kept the cameras rolling long after the official shoot wrapped, capturing unscripted moments that weren't in the screenplay. When asked for those tapes, Griggs claimed they were misplaced during the chaos. His evasive answers made headlines, and tabloids painted him as a villain. But despite the suspicion, police never found evidence tying him to the girls' disappearance. Without proof, Griggs walked free. The families of Emily and Lily refused to give up. For months, they staged vigils at the farmhouse gate, pleading with reporters, detectives, and anyone who would listen. Candlelight flickered against the rusted fence while mothers clutched photographs of their daughters, begging for leads. But as the weeks bled into months, the media circus faded. New scandals and tragedies stole the spotlight, and soon the girls' faces disappeared from the evening news. The farmhouse was boarded up, left to rot like a wound the town didn't want to touch. By 2001, the case was officially labeled cold. The boxes of evidence were pushed into storage collecting dust. The families received fewer updates, and calls to the detective's office were returned less and less. Even the locals grew tired of talking about it. Parents warned their children not to wander near the farmhouse, but over time, even that faded into a ghost story told around campfires. To most of the town, Emily and Lily became a memory, a tragedy too heavy to carry every day. And yet, for those closest to the case, something never sat right. The police insisted there was no evidence, but former crew members whispered otherwise. Some swore that pieces of film reels had gone missing from the storage vault, while others believed the farmhouse itself had been tampered with before the final police sweep. Whether it was sloppy investigation or something darker at play, nobody knew. What was certain was this: the official story had ended, but the real story was far from over. By 2009, the world had moved on from the mystery of Emily Carter and Lily Monroe. Their names occasionally resurfaced in true crime magazines or late-night talk shows, but for most, the story was buried under a decade of fresher scandals. For Daniel Hayes, however, the case never left his mind. Daniel was a crime reporter for a Portland newspaper, sharp, stubborn, and known for digging where others refused to look. He had covered the girl's disappearance in his rookie years, haunted by the strange silence that surrounded it. Even as editors urged him to chase more current stories, Daniel kept a folder in his desk labeled 1999. He couldn't let it go. One rainy afternoon in late September, Daniel came home to find a battered yellow envelope propped against his apartment door. There was no postage stamp, no return address, just his name scribbled across the front in messy block letters. Inside, wrapped in a thin sheet of brown paper, was a Hi8 videotape, a format so outdated it nearly looked like a relic. But what struck Daniel hardest wasn't the tape itself, it was the date scrawled in black marker on the label, August 14, 1999, the exact day Emily and Lily vanished. He stared at the tape for hours before touching it, torn between curiosity and dread. Finally, he pulled an old camcorder from his closet, a relic he hadn't used in years. As he slid the tape inside, he hesitated, his thumb hovering over the play button. Who had sent this to him? Why now, after 10 years of silence? And most importantly, what did the tape contain? He poured himself a drink, shut off the lights, and pressed play. The low hum of static filled the room, followed by grainy footage that made his skin crawl. The first few minutes seemed harmless. Behind the scenes shots of the farmhouse, crew members laughing, the girls running lines under dim stage lights. Emily adjusted her costume while Lily giggled at something off-screen. For a brief moment, it looked like an innocent home video. But then the footage shifted. The laughter died. The camera angle grew unsteady, tilting in strange, deliberate ways. Shadows filled the corners of the screen, and the once playful girls looked different, uneasy, hesitant, almost as if they were being watched. Daniel leaned closer to the screen as a new sound bled through the static. A man's voice, deep and unsettling, whispering from behind the camera. His words were muffled, but one sentence cut through clearly. "Keep going, don't stop now." Daniel froze. His heart hammered in his chest, his eyes glued to the flickering screen. He realized then that whatever was on this tape wasn't just lost footage. It was something darker, something the world was never meant to see. The footage flickered, colors bleeding in and out as if the tape itself were resisting being played. At first, Daniel thought it was just age, 10 years of dust and wear. But the distortions felt deliberate, almost as if someone had tampered with the recording. He leaned forward, the glow of the screen painting his apartment walls in pale light. Emily and Lily were there again, but their smiles were strained now, their eyes darting nervously toward something, or someone, off camera. Every time the camera shifted, Daniel swore he saw movement in the background, a shadow sliding just out of frame. As the minutes ticked by, the tape grew darker, literally and figuratively. The farmhouse lights dimmed, leaving only a lantern casting uneven shadows across the girls' faces. They weren't acting anymore. Emily kept wringing her hands, glancing at Lily as if for reassurance. Lily's lips moved silently, whispering something Daniel couldn't quite make out. The laughter from earlier footage was gone. In its place was silence, thick, suffocating silence, broken only by the occasional rustle or creak from somewhere off-screen. Then came the voice again, low, raspy, and much closer this time. "Look at the camera," it ordered. The girls obeyed instantly, their faces pale, eyes wide. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized they weren't performing, they were being controlled. Whoever was holding that camera wasn't just documenting the film. He was orchestrating something. Daniel instinctively checked his own apartment, scanning the shadows of his living room, half expecting someone to be standing there, recording him in the same way. At the 12-minute mark, the tape stuttered and the image blurred into static. For a few seconds, Daniel saw nothing but a gray, buzzing haze. When the picture returned, the setting had changed. Emily and Lily were no longer inside the farmhouse. They were standing in what looked like a barn, the air around them hazy, dust drifting through the single beam of light from a broken window. They weren't speaking now, just staring ahead, trembling. In the corner of the frame, something shifted, too fast to identify. Daniel rewound it 3 times, and each time his gut told him the same thing: they weren't alone. The scene ended as abruptly as it began. The girls froze, their eyes wide, as though they had just seen something terrifying beyond the camera's reach. Then the screen cut to black. For a long while Daniel sat frozen, the quiet hum of the VCR filling his apartment. He rubbed his face with shaking hands, replaying the sound of that voice in his mind. It wasn't just eerie, it carried authority, menace, control. Whoever was speaking had power over them. And for Daniel, one chilling realization took root: this tape wasn't meant for the police or the families. It was meant for him. Daniel replayed the tape again, his finger hovering over the pause and rewind buttons as if the truth might slip away if he blinked. Every time the footage jumped back to that barn scene, his stomach knotted tighter. Emily and Lily weren't acting, they were terrified. Their bodies were stiff, their movements jerky, like puppets trying to resist invisible strings. Daniel zoomed in on Emily's face. Her lips were trembling. She was mouthing something again, the same as before. After a dozen rewinds, Daniel caught it: "Help us." The words were silent but unmistakable. He pressed play again, forcing himself to watch frame by frame. That's when he noticed the shadow. It wasn't just movement, it was a figure. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, standing half in darkness near the far wall of the barn. His features were obscured, but the posture was wrong. Too still, too deliberate, like he wanted to be seen just enough. The camera never panned to him, almost as though whoever was filming didn't want to reveal too much. But Daniel's instincts screamed that the figure wasn't the cameraman. It was someone else entirely. At 20 minutes in, the tape distorted again, the audio crackling with bursts of static. Beneath the hiss, Daniel swore he heard something faint. Not a voice this time, but a sound. A scraping noise, metal against wood, echoing in the distance. Emily flinched at it. Lily's eyes darted toward the sound, wide with panic, as though they recognized it. Daniel replayed it over and over until his ears rang. It wasn't background noise. It was deliberate, like someone dragging an object across the floor. But what chilled him most was the girls' reaction. They knew exactly what it meant. The next cut was even worse. The girls were closer to the camera now, almost as if they'd been forced to move. Behind them, hanging on the barn wall, Daniel saw something that hadn't been mentioned in any police report: a film slate. The kind used to mark takes in movies. But this one wasn't labeled with a scene number. Instead, scrawled across the slate in uneven handwriting were 3 words: "Scene 47 begins." Daniel's heart pounded. There was no scene 47 in the film's original script. This wasn't part of the production. It was something else, something hidden. Daniel hit pause, staring at the frozen frame. The girls' eyes were locked on the camera, their faces pale as chalk, their mouths parted in silent terror. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just looking into the lens. They were looking through it, reaching out to whoever might one day watch this tape. And now, 10 years later, that person was him. Daniel forced himself to keep watching, though every part of him screamed to shut the tape off. Near the end of the recording, the footage grew shakier, as if the camera was being carried at a run. The barn was gone now, the girls were outside, their thin voices caught on the wind, crying out for someone unseen. The camera followed them, jerking violently, capturing flashes of trees, dirt, and broken fences. Suddenly, the picture steadied, and both Emily and Lily came into focus. They weren't speaking anymore. Instead, they were pointing toward something just outside the frame, their faces locked in terror. Daniel paused and rewound again and again, desperate to see what they had been signaling. At first, it looked like nothing more than a blur, a dark smear in the corner of the frame. But on the third rewind, he froze it at the exact second their arms lifted. There, half hidden behind the distortion of the old tape, was a signpost. The letters were faint, barely legible, but Daniel leaned in close until the screen's glow hurt his eyes. Slowly, the words came into focus: mile marker 47. He sat back, stunned. That location had never been listed in any of the case files he'd studied, nor had it been mentioned by the police or the families. Daniel knew Oregon's highways well, and he couldn't recall a marker numbered 47 anywhere near the farmhouse or its surrounding roads. His reporter's instincts kicked in immediately. Why would the girls have pointed to that sign? Was it a clue they had tried to leave behind? Or was it staged, planted by whoever orchestrated this nightmare to taunt anyone watching years later? The more he stared at the frozen frame, the more unsettled he became. The sign didn't just appear by chance, it was deliberate. It lingered just long enough on screen, as though the cameraman wanted it noticed, but not explained. Daniel jotted the words in his notebook, circling them twice until the ink pressed deep into the paper: mile marker 47. His hands trembled as he wrote, because deep down he knew what this meant. Someone had intended for the tape to be found. Someone had intended for him to see this. As the tape rolled on past that frozen moment, the screen erupted into static once more. The girls' figures blurred, their pointing hands swallowed by white noise. Daniel's reflection stared back at him in the black television screen, pale and shaken. He whispered the words out loud, his own voice cracking the silence of his apartment, mile marker 47. And in that moment, he realized the tape wasn't just evidence. It was a map. A trail leading somewhere no one had ever dared to look. Daniel sat in the dim glow of his television, the words mile marker 47 circling in his mind like a curse he couldn't shake. The tape had ended minutes ago, but he hadn't moved, paralyzed by the weight of what he'd just witnessed. His notepad lay open on the coffee table, the ink still wet where he had underlined the phrase again and again. The silence in his apartment felt heavier than usual, pressing against his ears, amplifying every tick of the clock on the wall. He was about to rewind the tape once more when a sudden, sharp knock rattled his front door. It was past midnight. Daniel's building was quiet at this hour, most of his neighbors long asleep. The sound startled him so badly that he nearly dropped the remote. His pulse spiked as he turned toward the door, listening. Another knock followed, slower this time, deliberate. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. Daniel's first thought was absurd. Maybe it was the person who had delivered the tape, waiting for him to finish watching. His second thought was worse. What if they had been watching him the entire time? He stood and approached the door cautiously, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The peephole revealed nothing but the dimly lit hallway outside. No shadow, no movement, just emptiness. Daniel hesitated, his breath fogging the glass as he leaned closer, straining for any sound. He waited a full 30 seconds, but the hall remained lifeless. Against his better judgment, he unlocked the chain and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty, except for a single envelope lying flat against the floor. Daniel bent down, his fingers trembling as he picked it up. The envelope was the same kind of battered yellow paper as the one that had held the Hi8 tape, but this time, no tape was inside. Instead, there was a folded sheet of paper, the handwriting jagged and uneven as though scrawled in haste or rage. Only 3 words were written, each in thick red ink that bled slightly into the paper. Horrifying TM. The message was blunt, final, and chilling. His stomach dropped. He scanned the hallway again, half expecting someone to leap from the shadows, but it was still deserted. Closing the door quickly, he locked it twice, pressing his back against the wood as if that thin barrier could protect him. The note dangled from his hand, his mind racing with questions. How did they know he had already watched the tape? Were they outside the entire time? And the worst thought of all, if they didn't want him watching the footage, what would happen now that he had? Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the glow of his flickering TV. The tape still inside the camcorder, the ominous note clenched in his fist. Every creak in the building, every hum of the pipes felt like footsteps coming closer. The words, "Stop watching them," pulsed in his head like a warning he was too late to obey. But despite the fear gnawing at him, he knew he couldn't stop. Whoever sent the tape, whoever left that note, they wanted control. And Daniel had never been the kind of reporter to walk away from the truth. He picked up his notebook, circled mile marker 47 one last time, and whispered to himself almost like a vow, "If the answers are out there, I'm going to find them." What happened to Emily and Lily after that night in 1999 remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries. Some say the tape was destroyed. Others whisper that Daniel himself vanished not long after. All that remains are fragments, shadows, and a question that refuses to fade. If you found a tape like this in your mailbox, would you dare press play? If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.